So you're thinking you want to move to Florida and move to the beach. Well, in today's video, I'm going to give you the top 5 reasons that you should maybe move somewhere else because there's some negatives about living at the beach. What's up, everyone? My name's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida. And if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in Northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest in real estate here in Northeastern Florida. So throughout my real estate journey, I've found that most people want to live close to the beach. It's a beautiful area, especially here in Northeastern Florida. But if you're looking to relocate to Florida, you should definitely consider some of these 5 things that I'm going to cover in this video. Of course, we're going to talk about the cost of living on the beach. We're going to talk about flooding and hurricanes. We're also going to talk about maintenance of your home and how the weather surrounding the beach and hurricanes are going to affect your home. We're also going to talk about the high insurance costs, and we're also going to talk about tourism and traffic within certain pockets of the beach. Now, of course, this is in general, like all this stuff is very general. It applies to the entire state of Florida. So anything that you find here is going to be similar for the entire state of Florida, but especially I'm going to be talking about personal experiences here in St. Johns County, just so I can reference it to my area and give you my expert information. So the first thing that we want to talk about is going to be the cost of living on the beach. Here in St. Johns County, the median sale price is just under $500,000 across the entire county. Now we stretch from the St. Johns River all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, and we have intercoastal in between that as well because St. Augustine is a barrier island to the state of Florida. So we have tons of waterfront properties here, but we also have a whole bunch of properties that aren't close to the water at all. It could take you 30, 40 minutes to get to any body of water. So they're not nearly as expensive as the homes that are on the beach or on the river. And that's one of the major reasons that people don't want to live on the beach is because they can't afford to, right? Typically, your beachfront houses, your waterfront houses are going to be 20, 30, 40% higher than your typical average sale within St. Johns County. And that's a lot of money for a lot of people, especially when the median sale price is $500,000. So if you're looking at a 20% increase, I mean, you're looking at like a $200,000, $300,000 increase on the purchase price of your home. Now, if you're looking at waterfront property across the entire state of Florida, you're going to find areas that are cheaper, you're going to find areas that are more expensive, but I want to talk about my area specifically. So I looked at Ponte Vedra Beach, looked at Villano Beach, St. Augustine Beach, Crescent Beach, pretty much the entire coast of St. Johns County, and it came up with about a median sale price of $770,000. Now, not all of these homes are going to be on the water, but all of them are going to be within a 5-minute drive, walk, bike ride, whatever that is, to the water. So they're not maybe direct oceanfront, but they could walk very easily to the ocean, or they could get to the intercoastal very easily, or they're on the intercoastal or on the ocean. So I just kind of grabbed that whole land mass because it's pretty much a body of a chunk of land that stretches from the north of the county to the south of the county that you really have very easy access to the beach and the intercoastal. And there's also scales to this. I mean, I think I just saw this past month, the highest sale was like $15 million, and it sold within 7 days. And that was up in Ponte Vedra Beach. But then you also have homes that are going to be, 500, 600,000 where they're 5-minute drive to the beach that are on Anastasia Island. And they're going to be smaller, maybe need a little bit of work, of course, but you have a huge gap of homes here in the area that it pretty much fits almost any budget. But if you're in, typically, I would say you're going to find cheaper homes, maybe in like the Davis Shore area. They're going to be smaller, but you're also going to be in a flood zone. So it's going to be kind of inverse because your flood insurance is probably likely to be higher if you're in a flood zone that's outside of flood zone X. And we'll talk about more of this later. So, of course, you're buying a home that's closer to the water, so you're going to be in a flood zone, but also the cost of maintenance on your home, the cost of insurance on your home, it's going to start to add up. So the purchase price is going to be more expensive, the insurance is probably going to be more expensive, and also the cost to maintain your home is also going to be more expensive. We'll get to that in just a bit. The second reason you probably don't want to live on the beach in Florida is going to be extreme weather and flooding. Now, we all just saw Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton barrel their way through the state of Florida, mostly hitting the Tampa area. But the rest of Florida is also susceptible to hurricanes. It's, surrounded by water on 3 sides. So you're bound to get hit at a certain point. Now, I'm in St. Johns County, like I said earlier. St. Johns County tends to do much better. We're in the northeastern corner of the state. We don't get hit with the same level of hurricane that South Florida or the Panhandle gets hit, and typically Tampa doesn't either. If you actually look at a map, you can see that Tampa's only hit I think 5 or 6 times over the past 124 years, whereas St. Johns County direct landfall of a hurricane has only been 4 times out of the past 124 years. So we're doing pretty well. Not saying we don't get affected by hurricanes, we definitely do, but direct landfall, where it's typically not hitting our area as hard as others. That also reflects in our building code here in northeastern Florida. We only have to build to a wind speed of, I think, 120 or 130 mile per hour, whereas South Florida has to build to a wind speed of 160 mile per hour. So in South Florida, you're going to see a lot of concrete block homes, you're going to see hurricane impact windows, where in North Florida, we're still allowed to build wood frame homes. We don't need to put hurricane impact windows in. And that's a big difference in cost and also safety of your home compared to South Florida. And that's because our average wind speed just doesn't get that high. We typically don't get hit that hard. And maybe that'll change in the future. I don't know. I'm just telling you what it has been so far. But if we get hit direct with a hurricane, that may change all the codes and what needs to happen in the future. But as of now, people have been building homes and have no problems at all. My grandma had a double wide trailer on the Intercoastal. My great grandparents had a double wide trailer on the Intercoastal since like the late 70s. And neither of them blew away, neither of them floated away. They've been there since then. So since I was a kid, there's been a double wide trailer on the water that I've been in and had no issues. They had a little bit of flooding several years ago during Matthew. They had to replace the AC because the house is elevated about 4 feet, 4 feet. But they had to replace the AC that was sitting on the ground. But that was it, so knock on some wood. But if you're living on the coast and the rest of Florida, I mean, it can get pretty scary when a Category 5 hurricane is barreling towards you, which we all felt this past couple weeks. Really, the whole nation knew about what was going on here. I just went to a conference with people from California and Washington, and they were just like, hey, did you do okay with everything going on in the hurricane? And I have a lot of realtor partners out in the Tampa area that aren't doing well, because if you've seen Tampa, I mean, a lot of it was underwater. They said they were going to have storm surges of like 10 to 15 feet, which is above what they typically would expect. And that's an insane amount of storm surge when you consider that like this is an 8-foot ceiling, right? My house would be underwater in that situation. So just with that, you're going to have to, really prepare for that. Of course, your insurance is going to be more expensive, but it really depends on a couple of other factors, like the elevation of your home and the construction of your home. And then, of course, you're also going to have more maintenance resulting from that. So if you do have some flooding coming in, and flooding is more likely to happen here than I would say the major wind speeds of a Category 5 hurricane. When you have the king tide, typically happens in September, and we also have days and days of rain resulting from the bands of a hurricane, you definitely will see flooding here in our area. But that's, it's specific to each part of Florida, so I can only really speak for here. But that is one concern that you're going to have, and you're going to have to either have the insurance to cover it, or you're going to need to be able to pay out of pocket to be able to take care of the flood damage, which could be very extensive, especially when you're getting into the mold side of it. So that you definitely need to keep that in mind, because the flood damage could be the biggest part of that. And since we're talking about weather and the impact on the home, pretty much all of your maintenance that you can think of for a home, you could cut in half when it comes down to a waterfront, beachfront, or within a 5-minute drive of a beach. In that typical area, everything you should cut in half. So, normally your AC, you're probably going to get 10 to 12, maybe 15 years. If you're on the beach with the salt air, the wind, the sun beating down on that unit on the outside, you'll see some that are 2 years old that are completely rusted out, just depending on where they are. Now, typically you can get 5 years. The unit will just look terrible for those couple years, but most of the stuff that is intercoastal front, that is on the ocean, that is anywhere near it really, we're seeing like a 5 to 7 year lifespan on their ACs. And the 7 year is really like an outlier. I would say like every 5, you're probably gonna have to change your AC. And if you have multiple units, probably just one install of an AC unit could be somewhere from $8,000 to $10,000 on the lower end. So, you're talking $20,000 in AC units. That's probably just going to come out of your pocket, cash money. Now, aside from that, in the state of Florida, insurance is obviously a problem. And I just put out a video a couple weeks ago about the insurance here in Florida. So make sure you check that. I'll link it above here. But in the state of Florida, even if you have a 50-year shingle, if you have a 30-year shingle, doesn't really matter in the terms of year. Insurance is pretty much pushing every 15 years, you need to get your roof changed. So if you're directly on the beachfront, once again, you're getting beat up with the salt, you're getting beat up with the wind and the rain and the sun. And that's probably, you might be able to get 10 to 15 years because most shingles are a 30 or 50-year shingle, but that's really pushing it. We're seeing a lot of metal roofs nowadays. That's when you're going to get about 25 years. Typically, anywhere else, they'd probably give a metal roof at least 50 years. Here, insurance is going to give you a problem around 25 years. And that's a big problem because you have to have the cash money to obviously put a new roof on, and the roof could be fine, right? It could be fine, but insurance is still pushing to get it changed, which is very annoying. But pretty much everything on the exterior of your home is going to corrode 2 to 3 times faster than you're thinking, right? So all of the wires that are on the exterior of your home, all of the handles that are on your doors on the exterior of your home, anything that you can think of will start to corrode away because of the salt, the sand, the sun, the water. It's just part, and you need to put the cost of that in your head, and also the time and the energy to fix those things if you're thinking about living on the beach in Florida. Now, I've mentioned it a couple times. I did put out that video a couple weeks ago about the insurance issue here in the state of Florida, but I'm specifically going to talk about northeastern Florida because I know southern Florida has gotten hit with a lot more premium increases than we have. Now, of course, we've had increases in premiums here in St. Johns County. It's just not nearly as drastic of the stories that we've been hearing nationally. Typically, those stories are coming from South Florida, the higher hurricane impact areas, the higher flooding areas. That's where they're seeing these large insurance premium hikes and really pricing people out of the market. So the main thing to know if you're buying a home in Florida, and especially a beach house in Florida, is going to be, is your home in a flood zone? Now, you can use the FEMA flood maps. You can just Google FEMA flood maps. It's you type your address in, it's an interactive map. You can scroll around, you can look at things to see where if you're interested in a specific home, you put the address into this FEMA flood maps, it'll pull it up. It's a colorized map, so it's very easy to read. But essentially, anything that's not colorized is in flood zone X, which is where you want to be. That's not where you're required to have flood insurance. They essentially list that as like a 99-year floodplain type of situation. So once, maybe never would happen within that time. And then you also have flood zone AE and all the other flood zones, and pretty much anything outside of flood zone X, you're going to have flood insurance. Now, the cost of flood insurance is obviously additional to your homeowner's insurance, and it could be extremely expensive depending on a couple of factors. The age of your home, the construction of your home. So is it wood frame? Is it masonry block? How high is your home? What's the elevation of the first floor of your house, right? Have you built up the home on concrete block up into a certain point? That's going to be a big factor in that. And then, of course, also the flood zone that you're in, right? How high are you above the sea level, and what flood zone you're in? So if you're in flood zone AE, it's going to be a lot better than other flood zones, but it's still going to cost you money to have flood insurance, significantly more. Give you a quick example. Now, this is anecdotal. I live in flood zone X. I'm not in a flood risk area. My flood insurance for a brand new construction home that's around 1,100 square feet is going to be $450 a year. Not that much. Now, if you're living on the ocean, I've seen quotes for $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year in flood insurance, and that's a pretty significant penny to account for every single year. And that's probably on the lower end, just talking about maybe the $750,000 to $1 million homes, right? Now, anything above that, depending on, once again, your elevation, the construction of the home, all those factors, it could be much, much more expensive. And the fifth reason you may not want to move to the beach in Florida is going to be tourism and traffic. Most people want to go hang out. We have some beautiful beaches here in Florida. Here in St. Johns County, we have like 40 miles of coastline. We have some of the best beaches in the state of Florida. I wouldn't say the best water. We have some of the widest beaches, beautiful white sand. Our water is kind of the green blue. We don't have like the South Florida water or the Destin water where it's crystal clear blue, but it's still very nice, and we have a massive beach. But with that, and the entire state of Florida is pretty much a tourist attraction at this point, you're going to run into more traffic, more tourism in those areas, especially during spring and summer. So that is something to definitely keep in mind. You'll also have a lot of Airbnbs in the neighborhood. That's another reason that prices are typically higher as well, is because people want to rent a home. They want to, bring their family. They want to feel like they're staying at home in the vacation town. So you'll see some neighborhoods, just like St. Augustine Beach, said, hey, we can't have any more Airbnbs in this area. You need to have a voucher to have an Airbnb. And the homes that have a voucher to do short-term rentals are much, much more expensive because it's an investment property at that point. You can make an income on it. So they've really pushed the prices of homes in the area. But it also then is like, hey, you know what? You're living in a neighborhood, and then your neighbor is running an Airbnb, and then you got people that come in that are like, hey, I'm on vacation. I'm having a good time. I'm going to party past 10 o'clock, which is our noise ordinance is from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm going to party past 10 o'clock. I'm going to be a nuisance. I'm on vacation. I'm having fun. That does happen, right? And then your neighborhood, right? Like, your neighborhood's not a neighborhood. You don't know your neighbor because it's just some investor that bought from La La Land, and they want to rent it out and make as much money as possible. So they're renting it out to whoever's coming through the door. And then your neighborhood becomes less of a neighborhood, right? You don't know your neighbor. You don't know who's going to be in there the next day. It's a constant revolving door of people. So that's a really bad problem about the Airbnbs, and that's throughout the entire state of Florida, right? There's really not an area that I could say that hasn't had that issue with Airbnbs. Many of the locals hate them, right? Because it changes the town so quickly. And that's one of the reasons that St. Augustine Beach had to put that voucher system in place. But aside from that, the beach is obviously beautiful. People want to go there. You also have a lot of the restaurants surrounding the area, a lot of the main streets surrounding the area. And that's where the tourists are going to gravitate to, right? They want to live like a small beach town type of life for a week or two. And that's going to add traffic to the area. So that's probably like in terms of living on the beach, in our area, the traffic isn't too bad. Really, the traffic's surrounded around the downtown, but it's still something to consider if you want to live there. And I think the bigger issue there is going to be the Airbnb problem, right? I just, having a revolving door of a new neighbor would really bother me, especially if you're like trying to raise kids in the area. That is something to consider if you're looking to move to the beach in Florida. And guys, that is it. Hope you gained a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of insight what life is like to live on the beach here in Florida. If you did, please do me that solid and tap that subscribe button below. Like the video and comment if you have any additional questions about living in Florida, or if you're looking to make the move to northeastern Florida, which I honestly think is the gem of Florida. But if you have any questions about buying, selling, or investing, I'm here for you. Reach out to me and my team directly. All we try to do is give you the information. Until next time, guys.